Hello and welcome back to the course on Python programming. I hope you enjoyed the previous couple of tutorials. We definitely looked at some very interesting styling techniques for dashboards. We went from a dashboard that looked like this, which first of all, we created a dashboard that looked like this, which is a great step already. And then we moved on to a dashboard that looks like this. So we learned how to style our dashboards. And it's definitely a very powerful skill to have. With styling and with visualization, just like with any concept in Python, you can keep going on and on and on forever. You can always learn new things along the way. And that's kind of the idea behind this course, that we cover all of the fundamentals, all of the absolutely necessary techniques. And then when you need something, you'll be able to quickly learn it, adapt it on the fly, pick it up from in practice while you are applying those techniques. So it's always a good idea to be open-minded, to look out for new techniques. And having said that, I would still like to throw in a few more techniques just so that you are even more comfortable with visualizations. So as mentioned, we can keep going forever with the different types of techniques, but it would still be beneficial to cover off. I think that I would be very happy if you pick these couple of techniques, remaining techniques out from this course and took them away with you, because it'll save you some time searching for them in the future. So that's why we have this tutorial, another tutorial on visualization. All right, so what are we going to be talking about? Well, today we're going to be talking about modifying some thematics of your visualization. And in fact, we're not going to keep working with this dashboard anymore. We'll just go back to one of the visualizations that we had previously, because it doesn't really matter which one we take as an example. We're going to work on this one. So this is a powerful visualization, but at the same time, it can be visually improved. So it can look much better than it looks now. And that's what we're going to work on. So we're going to work on adding a title. We're going to work on changing the axes, font size, adding an axis title here, working with the legend, making it more visible, changing the color. So all of those things we're going to discuss today. And those are all kind of thematical edits. So we already have the data on this chart. It's already telling us a story. But at the same time, if we want to include a chart like this in the final report, then it definitely should look better. And sooner or later, if you're going to be working with Python, you'll find yourself needing to find the ways of changing these things that we talked about, the ticks, the labels, the titles of the chart. So it's just better to put all of it in this one tutorial so that you can save some time. So hope you're excited about that. Let's get started. So I'm just going to actually copy this whole chart and I'm going to put it over here. So first let's make this a marker, and then let's zoom in, of course, to 200. And here we'll say this is going to be thematic edits. There you go. So give it a second. There it is. So there's our chart. What can we do about it? How can we improve its visualization part? So obviously we're not going to be working with this. This is the way we create the chart, and that's a bit of a coding exercise that we had. How can we now improve this chart itself? So first of all, what we're going to start with is the style of the grid. So if I say sns.set_style, and don't forget that, actually let me type this out first. So let's say we want dark, and we run that. So you can see that even though we're not using Seaborn to create this chart, we're using just the pyplot package and the histogram function from there. Seaborn is still affecting the chart. So that is why sometimes I say that Seaborn is an add-on on top of pyplot, because it even affects styles of non-Seaborn visualizations. So in this case, what we actually want is we want white grid. All right, that just makes it look neater and cleaner. The next thing that we would like to do is to change the size of this chart. And I want to show you a very useful hack here. There's a convenient way of changing chart sizes, which can be applicable to many different charts or many different graphs that you might be creating. So we have already learned that sometimes you can specify a certain parameter inside the function to change the size. But the hack is to create a subplot like we have here, but with only one item. So what we'd do is let's say instead of f, we'll say fig, and then we'll say ax equals plt.subplots, and we won't specify any parameters. So what that will do is it'll create a subplot with just the one item. So I'm just going to delete this for a second. If I run this, you'll see that we've got this subplot. So we've got a plot with one subplot in it. And now as you remember, if we just plot something, it'll always go into the last box or the last space in the subplots, right? Like we had previously when we didn't specify where something should go, it would always go in the last box over here. So here, if we just plot this now, it will go into that subplot. So even though you might not notice it here, this chart has been created inside this figure, which consists of one subplot. I know it's a bit tricky, and so why are we doing this? What's the whole point of this, Kirill? Well, that is because now we can easily change the size of this figure because we know how to deal with them. So we can just say fig dot, and then we'll say set. So in this case, we'll set the size in inches. So set size inches. And here you can specify how many inches. So for instance, if you specify 11.7 and 8.27, that's going to be the size of A4 paper. So if you run this, you'll see that we've changed the size. You can definitely make it even larger than that or even smaller. For us, it's already pretty large. So in here, I'm actually going to get rid of the header and the toolbar so we have some more space. So you can see now we're controlling the size of a visualization by controlling the size of the figure with subplots. It's a pretty handy trick to do it that way. All right, so there's our visualization. Now, what else can we do? How can we improve it? Well, first thing that pops to mind is that we don't have a title. We don't have a title of this visualization. We don't know we know what it's talking about, but other people that might be looking at it might not have the same information. So it's a good idea to add a title. To add a title, what we're going to do is, so after we've done the subplot and created the plot, what we're going to say is we're just going to say plt dot title. And here we're going to give it a title, movie, budget, distribution. So if I run that, you'll see that the title appears here. Of course, it's a very small title, so let's increase the size here. Let's say comma, and here we'll say font size equals 35. And by the way, if you press Shift Tab, you'll notice that the arguments are not listed here because we are right now passing these keyword arguments, and pyplot or the function title is able to recognize them along the way. So if you encounter a situation where you need to change something about your chart and you don't know what argument it is, the best way to go about it is to just look it up. Just Google how do you change the font size of the pyplot title, or how do you add a pyplot title, or if you're looking for more parameters, like for instance, we're going to change the color of the title. So how do you do that? So if you Google those things, and then after a couple of times, you'll get used to them and you'll remember what the parameter names are. And most of the time, they're pretty intuitive. So if I say font size equals 35, I run that, you'll see that there it is. There's my font size 35. And what else can I add here? I can add things like color, let's say dark blue, and then I can add a font name. So things like Times New Roman, Arial, I'm going to use console. So let's run that. There you go. You can see that that's changed to different font name, different color. So those might be useful for your styling of your charts. What else can we change about this chart? Well, now that we're talking about titles, how about we add labels to the x-axis and the y-axis? And it's done in a very simple manner. So same thing, plt, and then you just say y label, and then you pass on the parameters. So y label is going to be number, because this is a distribution, y label is going to be number of movies, and we're going to say font size right away equals 25, and let's say color equals red. Number of movies, and now let's do the same thing for the X label, but this time we'll say X label equals budget, font size 25, color, let's say green, because money is green. So there you go. So we've got number of movies, we've got budget, and now what we want to do is we want to let's change the size of the font size of these ticks, right? So because they're quite small right now, if we increase the size of these ticks, then they will definitely be more visible. They'll look better. So let's do that. We'll say plt dot x ticks, or let's say let's start with y ticks, and here we want to say font size equals 20, and same thing for x ticks. All right, so there we go. Mistake, it should be an S, not an R. As you can see, the font size has increased. And you can look up the function, more information on font tick, on the X ticks and Y ticks. what it can do is you can actually set the ticks itself. We're not going to do that now, but you can, if you research a bit more about these functions, then you can actually set the ticks that you want. You can change them. There's quite a lot of flexibility that PyPlot provides to you. All right, so there we go. That's a couple of those actions. Now, what else do we see about this plot? So if I zoom out, what is wrong with this plot right now? What can we further improve? Well, obviously the legend, it's quite small. Let's see if we can increase the size of the legend. How would we do that? How would we go about changing the size or some parameters of the legend? Well, there's another parameter that we have. So we already are calling the plt.legend function. All we have to do is now add some parameters into it to modify our legend. So first thing that we're going to do is modify the size, and the size is modified using the following parameters. So prop equals, and then you pass the keyword argument size colon 20, for instance. That will increase the size of our legend. There you can see it's now very, very visible. So that's just something that you need to kind of remember, that that's how you change the size of a legend for PyPlot. Then what we want to do as well is we want to change some things about the legend. For instance, it already looks good, but at the same time, like, it's not aesthetically pleasing that you can see this grid going through the legend. So let's try fix that up. Let's see if we can add a background to the legend. And let's start with the parameter which is called frame, or let's press Shift Tab. All right, so let's have a look through this. As you can see, it says just args and keyword arguments. We're just gonna go through them and find the actual arguments that we're interested in. So we've got here frame on, fancy box, shadow, frame alpha, those parameters that we want to check. So let's see what they do. Let's start with frame on equals true. So as you can see, frame on has added a frame. Wonderful. What else can we do here? Then we can say fancy box equals true. That will round the edges of our frame. Right now it's a square frame. If we say fancy box, it'll have a bit rounded edges. That's considered fancy. That's awesome. Then we're going to do another one, is a good one, is shadow equals true. So now it drops the shadow so that you can see it much better. And another one, so frame alpha, let's put that in. So it shouldn't really change much because it is not transparent now. But if you want to make it transparent, you can try 0.5, something like that. It's semi-transparent, but personally I don't like it. It becomes kind of grayish, so just frame alpha 1 is good. It's also good to keep that in mind because some other packages might change your frame, modify it, so it might make it transparent. So then if you want to regain control of that, you can just use frame alpha. All right, so there it is, our chart. So if I zoom out now, let's have a look at it, what it looks like. So as you can see, there is our final version of the chart, and it looks much better than what we had previously. And one more final thing that you might want to do is you might want to go to plt.hist, and here you might want to specify the colors. So you'd say color equals, but here you'll need to pass a list of colors because we have 7 colors. So you need to pass a list of colors. You need to say something like red, then salmon, blue, and so on. So you need to pass a list of colors because it's expecting 7 different colors. So if you want to do that, go ahead and do that and have a look at how you can add some additional control or some extra control. But other than that, our chart is finalized. This is a chart that you could include in a report. Of course, you wouldn't use green, red, and blue for your titles. You'd make them more subtle, but at the same time, this is a proof of concept that we can control our charts and we can control that they're all visible, that the text isn't very tiny. So there we go. Hopefully that's going to be useful to you and that will save you some time. You won't have to research all of these things separately. You can always come back to this tutorial when you need to edit a chart and just review how it's done. And that brings us to the end for today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, happy coding.